For problem 13, I noticed that the first thing we're going to have to do is remember to set our equation equal to 0. So I'm going to move the 6x from the right side over to the left side by subtracting it since it was positive. And now I have x squared minus 6x minus 55 equals 0. And I can proceed now with looking for a GCF and setting up my x. So I don't see a GCF. My a is 1, b is negative 6, and c is negative 55. Setting up the x, I'm going to have a times c is negative 55, b is negative 6. My two factors are negative 11 and 5. So now I can factor by grouping. So the final answer I get is going to be x equals 11 and x equals negative 5. For number 14, we're going to need to do the same thing in the beginning. So I'm going to move the 12 over by subtracting it. And now I am going to look for a GCF. And this time we have a GCF of 4. So I'm going to pull a 4 out of each of my terms. And now I'm only going to factor what I have in the parentheses here. So I'm going to focus in on the x squared minus 2x minus 3. So a is 1, b is negative 2, and c is negative 3. My a times c is negative 3. My b is negative 2. The two factors that multiply to negative 3 and add to negative 2 are negative 3 and 1. Okay, so we're going to go back and factor. Again, don't worry about the 4 right now. We're going to factor by grouping. And then once I have my factored form, I'm going to put that 4 back out front. So it's really important for you to do. Once you factor it, that 4 needs to come out front. It doesn't just go away. It's still with us in the problem. Now, since the problem says solve, I don't really need the 4 for my final answer. For my final answer, I'm just still going to set my two factors equal to 0. So the x minus 3 and the x plus 1. For problems 15 and 16, I noticed that we have binomials here. So that means that our problems just have two terms. So we're going to look for a GCF, and then we may or may not have a difference of squares left. So for my first problem, my greatest common factor here is going to be 2. And then, so I'm going to pull a 2 out of both of my terms, and what I have left is going to be x squared minus 4, which is a difference of squares. So the way that I factor that is I'm going to take the square root of x squared, the square root of 4, put them in two separate parentheses, one with a plus, one with a minus. And then to solve, I'm going to set those two factors equal to 0 and solve. Remember, whenever you're solving, the greatest common factor that we pulled out, in this case, just a 2, since there's not an x with it, it doesn't matter when we're solving. For the next problem, I need to first set it equal to 0, so I'm going to move my 2x over by subtracting. And then I'm going to look for my greatest common factor, which in this case I can pull out a 2 and an x. So if we pull out a 2x, what we have left is 2x minus 1. And 2x minus 1 is not a difference of squares. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to set each of my factors equal to 0. So 2x equal to 0 and 2x minus 1 equal to 0 and solve. In problem 17 and 18, we're going to solve these using the quadratic formula. So first of all, I have my quadratic formula written here. I would make sure that everywhere I have parentheses that you have parentheses as well whenever you're doing these problems. So let's first identify our a, b, and c, which is going to be 3, 1, and -4, and then plug those into the quadratic formula. I'm going to start by simplifying inside the radical, and I get 49. And then I'm taking the square root of 49, which is 7. Now, since I don't have any radicals left, I have two problems to write out. One of them is going to be -1 plus 7 over 6, which gives me 1. The other one is -1 minus 7 over 6, which gives me -4/3. So those are my two answers. For the next problem here, I've already plugged in my a, b, and c into the formula, and I'm going to simplify what's inside the radical first. So I get 2 plus or minus the square root of 4i all over -4. Excuse me, I said 4i because I'm a step ahead. I got 2 plus minus the square root of -4 over -4. So now I can simplify the square root of -4 to become 2i. And the last thing I'm going to do is I notice that there's a factor of 2 that I can divide out of all three of these terms right here. So I'm going to do that. I'm going to divide a 2 out of each of them. And I can either write my answer this way, or I could pull that negative that's in the denominator out front and write it this way. For problem 19, we're asked the solutions to a system are, and the answer is points. So the way that we write our answer would be as coordinate points. And then for problem 20, we're supposed to identify the solutions if there are any, and it's where the two graphs cross. So these 2 points are my solutions, and I'm going to actually write those points out to the side. So those points are 1, 4 and 9, 4. For problem 21 and 22, we're going to solve the system using any method we want, but substitution is suggested. I think that these are both set up pretty well for substitution. Same for on your test. Remember, your answer should be coordinate points in the end. So for this first one, I'm going to start by seeing what y equals. So on the top, I see y equals x squared minus 6x plus 13. I'm going to plug that into the bottom y. Once I do that, I need to distribute the negative that's out front of it. And then I'm going to get everything on the same side. I'm going to move everything over to the right side so that my x squared is positive. Now I can factor by grouping. Once I have my factors, I'm going to set them equal to 0 and solve. Since both of my factors are the same, x minus 4 and x minus 4, I'm just going to have one solution. So I'm just going to use x equals 4. Remember, we're not done at this point. We still need to find y so that we have a coordinate point. So let's go back up to our problem. We can pick either equation to plug 4 in for x. I'm going to use the top one. When I plug in 4, I get 5 for y. So my final answer is the coordinate point 4, 5. Problem 22 is going to be the same. I'm going to use substitution again. So I'm going to take what y equals on the bottom and plug it into the top. And then I need to get everything on the same side. I'm going to move everything to the left side to keep my x squared positive. And now I can factor. I've got a binomial, so I pulled out a GCF of 2, and what I had left was a difference of squares. So we're going to get x equals -2 and +2. So we're going to have two answers here. Let's start with x equals +2. If I plug that into my bottom equation, I get out negative 2 for y. So there's one answer. And then when x equals negative 2, if I plug that into the bottom equation, I get out y equals 6. So my other answer is the point negative 2, comma 6.